Here in Tel Aviv, the situation is incredibly tense. We've been forced into the stairwell too many times to count as fears of Iran's counterattack ramp up.
The U.S. and Iran launched a major attack on Iran Saturday morning, targeting members of Iran's leadership.
A short time ago,
in a video, President Trump spoke directly to the Iranian people, saying now is the time for them to rise up and overthrow the Iranian regime in power since 1979.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
Israel released a video which it says shows the impact of strikes on missile launchers in Iran. Iranian media reports strikes nationwide with smoke rising from the capital. Some of the initial strikes appeared to hit areas near offices of the 86-year-old supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It was not immediately clear if any top officials had been killed.
We'll have an answer in a few days to one of the key questions of do they know what they're doing? Have they been able to devastate the regime to a degree that the regime's rule is threatened and the leadership has, say, been decapitated?
Almost immediately, Iran launched a wave of missiles and drones targeting Israel, then launched more towards U.S. military bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar, as Iran's foreign ministry said it will defend its homeland and, quote, confront the enemy's military assault. This is the second time in 8 months that he has launched a military operation in Iran and comes just weeks after Trump ordered the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
They can never have a nuclear weapon.
President Trump had warned of these strikes if nuclear talks with Iran were unsuccessful. He had previously promised to keep America out of forever wars and said he'd bring peace. Now he acknowledges there could be American casualties, saying, quote, that often happens in war. Jason Bellini, Scripps News Group, Tel Aviv, Israel.
In a first-of-its-kind interview, former President Bill Clinton appearing in a closed-door deposition before the House Oversight Committee looking into the Epstein files. This bipartisan request coming after the former president was seen in photos with Epstein in files released by the Department of Justice. He maintains his innocence and said he knew nothing about Epstein's criminal activities. A bipartisan House Oversight Committee holding another closed-door interview as part of its investigation into the DOJ's handling of files connected to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, this time speaking with former U.S. President Bill Clinton.
Well, it took 7 months to get the Clintons in here.
The committee sought testimony from the former president and his wife, former First Lady and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The former president maintaining his innocence, telling the committee, I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong. Questions about Clinton's relationship with Epstein emerged late last year after photos showing the two together were released by the DOJ. It caught the attention of both Republicans and Democrats alike.
I think the American people have a lot of questions.
We have real questions that deserve serious answers.
Former President Clinton met Epstein in the early 1990s while he was still in office. Their relationship continued for years, but after Epstein's death in 2019, Clinton's office claimed the former president hadn't spoken with him for over a decade. On Thursday, Hillary Clinton told committee members she never knew Epstein and was unaware of his criminal activities.
I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices.
Former President Clinton's office has long been critical of the Trump administration's release of the Epstein files, claiming that someone or something is being protected. Committee Democrats have continued to call for President Donald Trump to appear over his previous relationship with Epstein.
President Trump needs to man up, get in front of this committee, and answer the questions and stop calling this investigation a hoax.
Former President Clinton is, of course, the most high-profile person to go before the committee, but they are not done yet. Potential witnesses could include the former UK ambassador to the U.S. and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Alex Miller, Scripps News Group, New York.
The search for Nancy Guthrie has lasted nearly a month. I'm Lori Jane Weha. The latest on the investigation ahead.
watching Scripps News, part of the Scripps News Group.
A dispatch from the room on the floor of my hotel in Tel Aviv that's used as a shelter. Not in this century has an adversary targeted U.S. bases simultaneously across at least 5 countries: Kuwait, the UAE, Jordan, Qatar, Bahrain. The latter, Bahrain, the most notable. 1, because the missile hit. 2, videos showing a massive smoke plume. And 2, this is the nerve center of American naval power in the Persian Gulf, home to America's 5th Fleet and U.S. Central Command, charged with overseeing American forces in the region. The ships were already at sea, moved out in the days before the missile struck a service center for the 5th. According to officials, all U.S. military personnel were in bunkers when the missile came in. No casualties reported from this first wave. The images of an American base aflame are consequential. There are 40 to 50,000 U.S. troops on the ground in this region, an estimated 15 to 20,000 in the 2 massive carrier strike groups. President Trump acknowledged for the first time the risk to American service members.
The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war. But we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission.
The Pentagon naming this Operation Epic Fury. Its mission now clear: end the Tehran regime. Jason Bellini, Scripps News Group, Tel Aviv, Israel.
The president has now severed all ties between federal agencies and one of the country's leading artificial intelligence companies. It involves Anthropic, the Pentagon giving Anthropic a deadline to allow the Pentagon broader access to its flagship model known as Claude. Excuse me. But Anthropic's CEO rejected that offer. It happened just moments ago. Scripps News business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett, has been tracking this story and working her sources. She joins us now. Mara, what was Anthropic's concern in saying no to the Pentagon?
Well, basically, what we heard from Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei in a statement that was released on Thursday evening, he point blank wrote that he disagreed with the things that the Pentagon was looking for, specifically around surveillance of Americans and weapons of mass destruction that are controlled autonomously without human oversight. And so we just saw a Truth Social post from the president laying out that they're following through with the threat that the Pentagon had put into place against Anthropic, severing all ties, going on to say that the president is directing every federal agency in the United States government to immediately cease all use of Anthropic's technology, saying that we don't need it, we don't want it, and will not do business with them again. He went on to say that there's going to be a 6-month phase-out period for agencies like the Department of War or the Pentagon who have existing ties with Anthropic. He also, in this statement, referred to employees at Anthropic as, quote, left-wing nut jobs. And so we had received this statement from the CEO of Anthropic, as I said last night, in which he laid out, he said, we've never raised objections to particular military operations nor attempted to limit use of our technology. But he laid out, in a narrow set of cases, we believe AI can undermine rather than defend democratic values. Some uses are also simply outside the bounds of what today's technology can safely and reliably do. And so basically what we heard here is that Anthropic is saying, hey, the AI is not ready to operate on its own in the way that the Pentagon was reportedly looking to use it. Now, in terms of the Pentagon's response, they pointed us to the president's Truth Social post. We had heard previously from Sean Parnell, the spokesperson for the Pentagon, point blank laying out that wasn't what they were looking to do in terms of the surveillance and the lethal autonomous weapons. We also heard from a official within the Pentagon that called Amadei, the CEO, a liar and said that he had a godlike complex. And so you can see the tension. All of this played out during this past week very publicly in terms of the meeting that we saw happen between Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and the CEO of Anthropic on Tuesday. And this all unfolded in just a matter of days. And now we're seeing the Pentagon follow through with that threat in terms of severing all ties with this tech company, Del.
Mari, is this not a convergence of two popular movies, Terminator, which everybody is familiar with, and also Minority Report, where we now have AI that can program autonomous soldiers, if you will, and we also have AI that can be used to commandeer facial recognition software and all kinds of surveillance that the public may not be ready for, which is what the Senate has been warning about when AI first surfaced a couple years back.
Exactly, Del. And I mean, Darius Amadei, the CEO of Anthropic, has even made reference to the Terminator in some interviews that he's done. Now, remember, Anthropic was built by former OpenAI engineers that left the company to then form what they called a more ethical platform. They've been self-described as an AI company with a soul. And so this is their way of saying, hey, we're standing firm on our moral ground, as much moral ground as an AI company can have, right? There's obviously a lot of speculation and criticism of that, but this was a big signal to say we are not going to hand over control of something that we do not trust to be out there on its own just yet, or we do not trust the government to have control of this. And so it is understandable why you're seeing the government, the president, lash out in this way, because they're not getting what they want, right? But they have already been working behind the scenes to prepare for this. We know that the Pentagon had also threatened to designate Anthropic a supply chain risk. This is something that's typically reserved for foreign adversaries that could force contractors to certify they don't use Claude in their operations. It remains to be seen if they're going to actually classify it as that, or if they're going to follow through with the Defense Production Act, which is another element that the Pentagon had threatened. But in the meantime, there have been conversations with other AI companies. We heard earlier this week that xAI, its Grok model, is reportedly signed on to allow broader military use. Google also in conversations similar to OpenAI. Surprisingly, Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, did come out in support of Anthropic this morning, and this follows a letter that was put out that indicated some internal pressure. Hundreds of Google employees, dozens of OpenAI employees signing on to this letter, calling on their companies to maintain ethical guardrails aligned with Anthropic's stance. And so Sam Altman's comments today, earlier on CNBC, standing behind Anthropic's stance, was a way of signaling that they have to listen to what these internal messaging is showing. And it will be interesting to see how all this plays out in terms of what companies decide to move forward with the government contracts, if at all, Del.
Mara, before I let you go, and now that the president has given the order, what does phasing out AI in this case actually look like?
Well, he did point out in his True Social post that over the next 6 months there would be a phase out for agencies that contract with Anthropic. That includes the Pentagon. But other than that, they said the president said that all of these agreements would immediately cease. And so whether that means one of these other AI companies comes in and subs in remains to be seen. Anthropic did say in its statement yesterday, the CEO writing, that they were committed to a smooth transition if the Pentagon went through with its threat, which we're now seeing. But this is a tool that is used by many contractors, by many elements of the agencies, and so they're going to have to roll back a lot of their operating systems and figure out a substitution or task humans with some of the work that Anthropic was helping with before. And so it definitely seems like it could be a rocky transition given the speed of this declaration from the president.
Yeah, the names seem so innocent, Claude and Grok, but the truth of the matter is this is very, very high-tech and very, very controversial stuff. Scripps News business and tech correspondent Mara Barrett live for us in Denver. Mara, thank you very much. A Venezuelan woman in Florida facing an impossible choice: leave everything she knows or face deportation. It's all because the Trump administration ended what is called TPS, or temporary protected status, for most Venezuelans. Annette Gutierrez with our Scripps News Group in Tampa talked to the woman.
I'm Annette Gutierrez reporting. Back in November, I spoke with Andrina Barroso, a Tampa businesswoman who had spent 11 years in the U.S. and was facing the end of her temporary protected status. When I spoke with her then, she said she wanted to stay anonymous, worried about immigration authorities. Now she's back in Venezuela and ready to share her story publicly. Andrina Barroso, a Tampa entrepreneur who built a beauty business, has made a new life for herself in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela.
And also I moved into my apartment 2 days ago, actually. So the transition, have been like sometimes difficult, but at the same time, I feel like I made the right decision.
But once a difficult decision that she shared with me back in November, one she felt forced to make after her temporary protected status expired.
Those days, my heart was broken. It's still broken, but I have resilience.
When we first spoke, she hid her face, fearful of ICE agents, which is a big part of why she left. She says she has too much dignity to live in fear.
In my head and my mind was not an option to be illegal there. And I don't want to feel like paranoid if I'm seeing ICE or to be hiding.
So after 11 years in the U.S., she made the difficult choice to pack her bags, sell her business, and return to her home country to start over.
I'm glad to come in here now because I feel I arrived in the best moment.
That feeling grew stronger after the Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, was captured in a U.S. military operation in January.
It took me like a surprise. I didn't understand what's going on in that moment. I feel like Venezuela has like a big change in the next months and years.
She says some cities still experience power and water outages for hours, but she remains hopeful to see change soon. And while she doesn't believe her TPS status should have been revoked, she says she was surprised by how much safer the country feels now.
You can be with your phone, you can be like wearing like, nice shoes or everything. So it's not in the past, you feel panic if you have your phone in your hands. No, this is not happening. It's safe.
Although the transition has been challenging, she says her faith and perseverance are keeping her positive as she works to launch a new business. Barroso says she's excited to start this new chapter in Caracas, and she says she plans to open the doors of her beauty business as early as Monday.
President hitting the road at this hour, heading to Texas to tout his economic speech after the State of the Union. It was unveiled Tuesday here in Washington, but did that address give him a post-speech bump in the polls? Got a lot of applause from Republicans that night inside the chambers, but as they say, how is it playing in Peoria? Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty joins us now with the latest polls. And Raff, does the president have any increased momentum coming out of the State of the Union?
Well, a lot of applause and a lot of opportunities for applause because it was the longest speech in history. We'll start with the good news, perhaps, Del, here on a Friday afternoon. We'll start with some optimism. So if you're part of the White House right now watching this, here is the sort of takeaway that you can hang your hat on, is that most Americans felt, by and large, that they had a positive impression of the president during his speech. This is a poll that we did with our partners at Talker Research, and it is a poll of people who watched the State of the Union. So the caveat here is that most people who watch a State of the Union are, in fact, a member of the same party as the president delivering it. And so this example, it did skew a little bit more towards Republicans. And you see that by and large, folks thought that the president spent a lot of time on the priorities that they care most about, which from our previous polling, we know it is by and far the economy, to a lesser extent, immigration, healthcare, but it was really about affordability. And you heard the president try at least to start that speech on that. So confidence in his plans on affordability, well, here's the other end of the spectrum. 48%, that's less than a majority, of course, say that they have more confidence. You add up those other two, and you get a higher percentage, 52%, say their opinion either didn't change or they have less confidence in the president's plans when it comes to affordability. And then, of course, the other big focus of the night were tariffs. This coming just a few days after that Supreme Court ruling. And this is pretty striking, again, because more Republicans are polled in this, because this is people who watch the speech, but 50% say these tariffs are hurting Americans. Also, not a whole lot of confidence in the president's trade and tariffs agenda going forward. So if he was trying to go in to sort of explain to Americans the benefits of those policies that we know are now at 10%, that I'm sure going to lead to more court cases, well, he did not do that. So it'll be interesting to see him sort of try to take whatever sort of momentum he has. But what we have seen time and time again from this president is that his message plays really strong for Republicans, and that's what we saw in those numbers. It just does not resonate outside of his Republican base when you're talking about Democrats and you're talking about independents.
We continue to see, too, Wall Street. The markets giveth and the markets taketh away. They've been talking about Dow 50. It's not Dow 50,000 anymore, but right now he's in Texas. Big primary there. I think it is on Tuesday. What are you watching?
Well, look, despite his problems with some of those other groups that are outside of his political base, he still remains so incredibly popular among that MAGA conservative base. And that's why this speech here that I think we're going to dip into when he takes the stage here, if he is on time today, in Corpus Christi, is so interesting, because it's not a political speech, but of course, being in that state ahead of that primary on Tuesday, it just so happens to be one of the earliest primaries, also one of the most interesting on both sides of the aisle, with the focus today being on Republicans, because you have John Cornyn, a longtime Republican senator who has been here in Washington representing the state of Texas for a while in Congress. He really is in jeopardy of losing that primary against Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of the Lone Star State. There's also another Republican, Wesley Hunt, and all of them are trying to portray themselves as the Trump-backed candidate, though the president has been very clear that he is not endorsing any of them, though John Cornyn apparently was on the flight to Texas this afternoon.
Surprising that there is a sitting senator from your party that you're not backing. So.
Right. And then the leadership in D.C. tried to get the president to back Cornyn because they feel like he has a much better shot at winning against the Democrat, whereas Ken Paxton has a lot of potential baggage that could come up.
Before I let you go, are they worried about both Democrats? Because Tallarico is doing well. They believe he would do well against either Paxton or Cornyn. Yeah. But Jasmine Crockett is outpolling Tallarico.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, the polls have been all over the place, but both of those Democratic candidates are arguing that they are the more electable of the two, that they had the better chance. And that's what we in the media always talk about, Texas potentially going blue. It hasn't happened in a few decades. Yeah, Del, I think you've seen this one before.
I've seen this play before. Yeah. I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah. Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty. Raff, as always, thanks.
Thanks, Del.
Here in Tel Aviv, the situation is incredibly tense. We've been forced into the stairwell too many times to count as fears of Iran's counterattack ramp up.
The U.S. and Iran launched a major attack on Iran Saturday morning, targeting members of Iran's leadership.
A short time ago,
in a video, President Trump spoke directly to the Iranian people, saying now is the time for them to rise up and overthrow the Iranian regime in power since 1979.
When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations.
Israel released a video which it says shows the impact of strikes on missile launchers in Iran. Iranian media reports strikes nationwide with smoke rising from the capital. Some of the initial strikes appeared to hit areas near offices of the 86-year-old Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It was not immediately clear if any top officials had been killed.
We'll have an answer in a few days to one of the key questions of do they know what they're doing? Have they been able to devastate the regime to a degree that the regime's rule is threatened and the leadership has, say, been decapitated?
Almost immediately, Iran launched a wave of missiles and drones targeting Israel, then launched more towards U.S. military bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar, as Iran's foreign ministry said it will defend its homeland and, quote, confront the enemy's military assault. This is the second time in 8 months that he has launched a military operation in Iran, and comes just weeks after Trump ordered the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
They can never have a nuclear weapon.
President Trump had warned of these strikes if nuclear talks with Iran were unsuccessful. He had previously promised to keep America out of forever wars and said he'd bring peace. Now he acknowledges there could be American casualties, saying, quote, that often happens in war. Jason Bellini, Scripps News Group, Tel Aviv, Israel.
It's been nearly a month now since the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. The Today Show host's mother went missing earlier this month. With more than $1 million now being offered for tips leading to her recovery, are investigators any closer to finding her? Scripps News senior national investigative correspondent Lori Jane Gliha joins us now. And Lori Jane, what is the latest on the investigation?
Hey, Del. Well, despite the incredible recovery of photos and videos from Nancy Guthrie's front door Nest camera a few weeks ago, all the leads we've seen play out publicly have not brought Nancy home. But there still has been a flurry of activity at her house in recent days, and that gives many people continued hope.
Multiple law enforcement vehicles and officials returned to Nancy Guthrie's house this week as her daughter, Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, made another plea on social media.
We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home.
Savannah, conceding that her mother may have passed away, offered up to $1 million for help getting answers.
We need to know where she is. We need her to come home. We also know that she may be lost. She may already be gone.
Investigators reported a surge in tips following the Guthrie family's reward offer. Meanwhile, they continue to follow leads and collect possible evidence. They're hoping somebody comes forward if they know the person behind this mask, brazenly standing at Nancy Guthrie's front door, tampering with her Nest camera just before she disappeared.
And this morning, Savannah Guthrie posted a clip on her Instagram page showing a Today Show segment that basically walks people through how they can remain anonymous if they provide a helpful tip and possibly receive a cash reward if it leads to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie. Del.
And Lori Jane, you mentioned that surge in tips. Anything of note coming in?
Well, the Pima County Sheriff's Department says people are submitting footage, and they are aware of a recent video from a residence that was, quote, a bit further from the Guthrie home. It appears to show some vehicles driving by around a similar time to when Nancy went missing. And they are still requesting that people submit video evidence if they believe they have something that might help. Del.
And also, have you been able to find out anything about the locations that authorities did search while looking for Nancy Guthrie, and what clues might have led them there?
Yeah, you know what? Scripps News checked with the courts again to see if we could get some additional insight on the search warrants that have been carried out and the tips that prompted law enforcement to detain some of those individuals initially. But those court records, Del, are still sealed.
But it's good that we continue to stay on this story and continue to hold out hope, not only for Nancy Guthrie, but also for the family of Savannah Guthrie, our colleague. Scripps News Senior National Investigative Correspondent Lori Jane Gliha. Lori Jane, thank you very much. We continue to follow the developing news coming out of Minnesota. 30 more people have been indicted for allegedly taking part in that ICE protest inside a Minnesota church. That brings the total now to 39, including journalist Don Lemon. Now, this move is keeping with Attorney General Pam Bondi's promise, saying you cannot attack a house of worship. She says if you do, we will prosecute you. Scripps News Legal Affairs correspondent Avajoy Burnett is in our D.C. newsroom. And Avajoy, tell us more about the 30 additional people who have been indicted.
Del, the number of people who are now on the superseding indictment, it has quadrupled. But beyond the notable names we've spoken about so far, for example, Don Lemon and another journalist whose name is Georgia Fort, and also a civil rights leader in the state of Minnesota, we aren't seeing any other names on this list who are people of national notoriety. As you mentioned, Attorney General Pam Bondi, she mentioned this on social media just this afternoon, announcing that 25 people have been arrested, and she said more arrests will be coming this afternoon in the day. She said these arrests were made at her direction, but what we do know with this particular story here is that these people have been accused of entering this church in Minnesota back in January, and they're accused of intimidating the churchgoers there. Many of the folks who walked into that church, they said they were protesting a leader in that church who is also an ICE official. And remember, the backstory here is that there were protests that were ongoing in the state of Minnesota as about 3,000 ICE agents descended on the state for immigration and customs enforcement operations. And all of this was also happening after 2 residents in that state died after having encounters with ICE agents in 2 separate incidents. We're talking about Renee Good and Alex Preddy. What we also know is that many of these people have proclaimed their innocence. Don Lemon, for example, and Georgia Fort, they said that there were journalists who were exercising their constitutional rights of going into this church and covering what was going on. We do know, as you see the images there, Don Lemon has actually gone into court. He went into court a few weeks ago, and he entered a plea of not guilty in this particular case. So this is a story, Del, that continues to develop as we now know that an additional 30 people have been added to that indictment out of the state of Minnesota.
So, Avajoy, what's next?
What's next now is what the Attorney General mentioned. She said that additional people will be arrested, but the next steps after that is actually getting all of these people into court. We saw Don Lemon entering court not too long ago, just a few weeks ago, but in that particular instance, all the 9 people who were on this original indictment, they did not enter court for their initial appearance where they would enter a plea of guilty or not guilty at the same time. And now that we have 30 additional people, possibly, there's a possibility that all of these folks will be entering the courthouse there, the federal courthouse, at different times to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. Don Lemon, he has entered a plea of not guilty when he went into court not too long ago. Georgia Fort, that other journalist who is very well known in the state and gained notoriety because she streamed the moment when officials showed up at her door to arrest her. She also entered a plea of not guilty. And Akima Levy-Armstrong, a civil rights attorney there and the president of the NAACP chapter, also pleaded not guilty. So that's what we will be seeing in the coming weeks, is possibly a parade of additional folks who've been indicted on the superseding indictment, entering a courthouse and entering a plea of guilty or not guilty, Del.
Scripps News Legal Affairs correspondent Avajoy Burnett, live for us in D.C. Avajoy, thank you very much. Elsewhere, immigration court observers who were detained and kicked out of a federal building in San Diego are now telling their story. That happened this week. Laura Acevedo from our Scripps News Group talked to 2 of them.
This was the citation issued to 4 volunteers here at the federal building on Thursday. They say they were all briefly detained, then escorted out of the building.
Failure to comply with signs prohibiting.
Robert Kovelman is reading from a citation he and 3 other volunteers got Thursday morning, issued by Federal Protective Service Police on the 2nd floor of the federal building, where ICE offices are located and check-ins take place.
Told us that we couldn't stand there and do what we do and that we were loitering.
The volunteers say they were briefly detained and then escorted out of the building, told they couldn't return for the day. These types of volunteers have been showing up since last May, going with people to their immigration hearings and check-ins with ICE after the agency started detaining people in the hallways. Many of the volunteers are faith-based community members. I've spent days in the hallways with these volunteers, observing the work they do.
We stand with people, we sit with them, we pray with them. We're just a presence as they walk this journey.
Thursday, volunteers say officers told them the rules had changed.
They said, no, that's not correct. The rules changed as of yesterday, that it's been in process and that there's been a change.
While we don't know what led up to these citations, the Department of Justice policy states people can observe proceedings in courtrooms, entrances, exits, and corridors. We reached out to the Federal Protective Service about what happened Thursday, but haven't heard back.
The government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. We are the people, and we have the right to see what our government is doing.
The citations carry a $250 fine plus a $30 processing fee. Laura Acevedo, Scripps News Group.
testing an artificial intelligence chatbot named Patty in 500 restaurants. The AI assistant connects to worker headsets and helps managers with hospitality feedback, order management, and restocking. The chain says it is not meant to surveil employees or enforce Scripps, but to improve customer service. Burger King plans to roll out Patty nationwide by the end of the year. Financial technology company Block is cutting about 40% of its workforce, laying off more than 4,000 people as artificial intelligence takes over their jobs. Co-founder Jack Dorsey says the company behind Square and Cash App will reduce its staff to just under 6,000 employees. Dorsey predicts other companies will follow suit as AI reshapes the tech sector, and the move certainly raises concerns about future employment. Federal safety officials are warning about more than 40,000 pressure cookers that can cause severe burns. The Gourmet 6-quart model, sold between 2017 and 2020, can open while still pressurized, spraying out hot contents. 5 people have been burned, 4 of them severely, which prompted lawsuits. Owners should stop using the cookers immediately and dispose of them. The Safety Commission says Gourmet and Best Buy have refused to agree to a proper recall.
I'm Peter Maxwell in Detroit, and the combination of the new 24% tax, the harsh winter weather, and customers stocking up before the new year has left shelves full, and operators say they're worried the slump could stick around.
I was kind of like, oh man, that's a lot.
For customers like Eduardo, he wasn't really sure how this new marijuana tax would impact him.
It don't really affect you too much if you don't buy too much like big stuff, you know what I mean?
But for recreational shops, it's a different story.
January is just a slower month for retail in general.
Brian Yono owns Hyde Cannabis in Detroit. He says his sales last month took a hit compared to December.
I think I declined in business at least 15%.
December was a blockbuster for Michigan, nearly $270 million in sales, as customers rushed to buy and retailers stocked up before the state's new 24% tax on recreational marijuana kicked in.
That was my goal. Hey, let me stock up for the first quarter.
The combination of consumers stocking up, harsh winter weather, and the tax hike created a massive blow to the industry.
For our company as well, it was the worst sales month we've ever had, we've ever experienced.
Doghouse Farm CEO Eric Slutsky says there's a real fear sales could keep sliding all year.
It's a number of factors that all kind of came together at the same time, but the tax is definitely one of the big factors. And, I mean, to me, I think one of the big things to get out to everybody, especially to the state and to legislators, is this is the sign of things to come.
I definitely think we'll see more stores and wholesalers close.
Cannabis attorney John Frazier says the writing was on the wall when lawmakers passed the 24% tax.
For businesses that were already on weak financial footing, having less revenue means less profits and less ability to withstand the downturn.
But for consumers like Eduardo, the new tax is not stopping him from buying.
It's a couple dollars of change, not too much. You know what I mean? It's not too much.
I'm Peter Maxwell, Scripps News Group.
This is very challenging for me. And
some bills that the Tennessee legislature considers are pretty straightforward.
This is not a simple bill. It's not an easy bill.
This is not one of them.
The bill prohibits a person or entity from simultaneously owning or controlling a pharmacy in both a covered entity and a pharmacy benefit manager.
Before we get too far into debate, let's bring in an expert. Tom Campbell is the dean of the College of Pharmacy at Lipscomb.
Should a PBM own pharmacies, is a really interesting question.
He tells us a pharmacy benefits manager, or PBM, is put simply a middleman that negotiates the costs of drugs between pharmacies and insurance companies.
And what are the reimbursement rates for those drugs to those individual pharmacies? So they do all the negotiations related to that process.
The proposed bill would prevent the owner of a pharmacy from also owning the PBM because small independent pharmacies simply can't compete.
Whereas an independent pharmacy owner doesn't have access to that. And so all they're left with are very low reimbursement rates. In fact, in some cases, dispensing prescriptions at a loss.
CVS is an example of a big pharmacy that also owns a PBM called Caremark. They would be forced to either sell their PBM or their pharmacy if the bill passed. Would it be possible for CVS to be able to sell off the PBM aspect of their business and still stay open in Tennessee?
In full transparency, I don't have an answer to that because I work for the retail side and we have no contact with the PBM.
Adam Rogers has worked for CVS for 15 years. He says if this bill passes, the company could be forced to make a drastic decision.
It would just essentially result in us closing all of our CVS locations.
CVS owns 134 locations in Tennessee, meaning some communities, especially in urban areas, would be left without a pharmacy close by.
That access is really important at a neighborhood level for the people that live in a community. They need to be able to go to the corner drugstore, whether that be a CVS or an independent owner or Walgreens or whoever that might be.
If you sense that I'm passionate about this, I've been fighting this for a long, long time.
The Senate Health Committee, interestingly enough, has 3 either current or former pharmacists as members. They're pushing hard for the PBM pharmacy ownership ban.
The profession has changed, and this vertical integration is tearing our profession apart. I mean, surely you see that.
The bill advanced, but has several stops to go. Rogers hopes there's room for negotiation.
I think there's always ways to have conversations about things beyond taking, the absolute far extreme option that we're having here that would result in closing of all our facilities in the state.
Chris Davis, Scripps News Group.
The IU football team's success in the college football playoff has translated into huge opportunities for many of the Hoosiers' top players. As the NFL Combine gets underway this week in Indianapolis, the Cream and Crimson will be well represented in all phases of the action.
Just that they're going to get a guy that is going to come in and be the hardest worker in the room from day one. I'm committed to a process where I just want to be the best at what I do, and if that's playing me on special teams, playing me on defense, I'll do anything for a team that wants to win. Because at the end of the day, all I want to do is win.
Linebacker Aiden Fisher was the first of 9 Indiana players to step up to the media podium on Wednesday. Fisher's rise from a respectable talent at James Madison to a top-level All-American in his 2 years in Bloomington led him to this chance on the league's big stage.
Going from the group of 5 level, I wanted to play with the best, and I want to play against the best. So for me, going to the Power 4 level and making that transfer was a little bit different of a scenario than, the usual transferring to different schools from the same level. And also having my coaches go, I think, helped me a lot.
As the week rolls on, we'll see a full slate of his IU teammates coming through the Combine roll call. Quarterback Fernando Mendoza will talk here on Friday morning. Mendoza has said previously he's not planning to throw at the Combine. He'll save that for a still-to-be-scheduled pro day in Bloomington.
Being around him the past year has elevated my game so much, made me a better person, better teammate, a better leader as myself. He's somebody who just elevates everybody around them. He's an unbelievable, obviously a talent, but just an amazing human being to be around.
But for Fisher and the rest, the next few days will be a big deal in working toward a potential call on draft weekend.
The draft for me is just going to be family, all immediate family, and then grandparents, uncles, aunts, all just sitting in my house playing the waiting game. So it'll be a good experience, but for me, it's just all about having my family around me.
Brad Brown, Scripps News Group.
So sweet, yeah. I just wanna try.